Thank you. I actually I changed roles since, but that's okay. We at Coca-Cola, we work very hard, and we've been striving since many years to create a positive, if not memorable, consumer experience. And whether that's through our advertising, whether it's through the engagement with consumers through our digital assets, physical assets such as vending machines, or whether through engagement with the shopper on the shop floor. So I'm very happy to introduce to you Simon James. And Simon is the global lead data and analytics at SapientNitro. And he's going to talk about how customer experience is impacting brand value. So Simon.
Thanks very much, Johan. Hello, everyone. So today I'm going to tell you an old story that you should all be very familiar with, but with a sickening twist in it. The death of our industry has been predicted many times, and not least at the beginning of the internet situation, where the Wall Street Journal, who may have had more problems with the interaction future than we have had, predicted that our industry was unprepared for the internet. And you only have to leap forward 23 years to see that the $1.8 trillion advertising industry did pretty well out of that interactive kind of session. It wasn't the existential threat that people thought it was. And you know, the three horsemen of the apocalypse did pretty well out of this. Google, Facebook, and Martin Sorrell were the three main beneficiaries of this kind of exponential growth from the change in the industry. And you know, there's a kind of a very common understanding of what is happening, and this lightsaber battle that's going on between good and evil, where I think TV is good and digital is evil. But there will be a kind of a key moment next year in 2017 when, in the US at least, digital spend is forecast by eMarketer to outstrip TV spend. And you know, this is a narrative that we've been living with for a number of years. The slow and linear growth of these things has been happening in front of our eyes. But I think this kind of hides the real story that's going on behind the scenes, that actually there's not much change here whatsoever. It's just the world becoming more digital. YouTube advertising is TV advertising. PPC ads are classified ads. Facebook ads are kind of magazine ads. Banner ads are billboards and press ads. So all we've really done is digitized the things that we've always had. And maybe that's why, to the last session, why we have so many ad blockers, because we haven't adapted the formats for a digital world. We've just kind of made a faster horse, if you like, rather than truly created the automobile. So this really masks the kind of the fundamental shift that's happening for our clients and colleagues in the industry at the moment, which is that the CMO budget is moving away from communications, and it's moving toward technology and experience. And that's because the CMO's role is moving towards technology and experience. If there's a touch point somewhere, the CMO has to own the brand touch point. It can't be owned by IT because it impacts on the consumer experience, and the consumer experience is the brand. It's no longer good enough to have exceptional advertising and mediocre experiences. You'll never win the game. You'll never disrupt if you just have a mediocre product behind that. And to back that up, Gartner released a survey last year that looked at how CMO's budget breaks down. And reading all the content so far, I would say all the content in this festival so far kind of talks to the 43% on the left, which is communications and promotions and everything that goes with it. 17% of money is spent on experience, 33% on technology, and 7% on innovation. So the bulk of money being spent is not in communications. It's on things other than communications. And sometimes when we live in ad land, live in a bubble, we think that communications are everything. They're not. There are other things at play. And the challenge for us as marketers is we know how advertising works. There's 36 years of the IPA effectiveness papers that anyone can read to see how great advertising campaigns work. There are a bunch of books that you can read that I've kind of reduced books to read on the toilet style into one kind of paragraph each that allows you to understand those whole books. You don't have to read the books now, just read the titles. But you know, this is the thinking that our industry is using at the moment to understand how advertising works. There isn't an equivalent approach to experience. There isn't the depth of research. In fact, there's only really one chart around the world which is this watermark consulting chart that takes the Forrester CX, so CX means Customer Experience Index, and looks at the long-term stock performance of CX leaders and laggards against the S&P 500. And guess what you see? And we don't know how spurious this is, but CX leaders outperform the stock market quite significantly. And the fact that Amazon is in the leaders probably counts for a lot of that uplift just on their own. But again, this doesn't tell the whole story, because of the top 15 brands from Forrester's CX index, 11 of them don't actually report any results. 9 are privately held companies, and 2 do not report profits. And amongst that group, again, is Amazon, who kind of doesn't chase profit. And it's almost as if the people who have the best experiences today are free from the kind of the focus of Wall Street to deliver profits. That frees them up to invest in experience. And, a lot of the disruptive brands, I think most of the people represented in this room represent either big blue chip brands or their agencies. The disruptors who don't need those agencies and don't play by the same rules as the big brands are using different business models to disrupt. And that's a key learning, I think, is that, people are changing the rules of the game by investing in experience. Uber did not build its brand through TV advertising. I know that's an easy example, but there are 1,000 others out there who have kind of built a business by doing things slightly differently. And I think we'll see more of this in the future. Talked about experience earlier, but even just like we've seen all the definitions of viewability and the amount of science that goes into kind of justifying what the definition and getting people to agree standards, there are no real standards to experience eitherwise. I think like UX is a term that you're familiar with, that it's something that digital agencies do. If you think that digital agencies resize banners for a living, then again, that's not what kind of digital agencies do at all. And I just want to explain the difference between UX, CX, or customer experience, and service design, because you're going to see these terms more and more in the future. So UX is just really the glass. It's any interface that has a content management system, whether that's IoT or a website or an app or a kiosk, that's kind of user experience. Customer experience then includes all the offline touch points like a call center or the click and collect experience in a store or the retail environment. But if you want to get into service design, then as an agency, you need to think about technology, you need to think about organizational design, and you need to think about business process engineering. And the key insight here, I guess, is that's what the CMO is becoming more and more responsible for today. Not just the external face of the organization to the world, to consumers, but how you start to reorganize your own business to be more customer-centric. When all we ever did was design websites, you never really changed the organization. You just changed the outside interaction layer. Most companies now do not need better websites. What they need is a fundamental reorganization around consumers to knock down those silos that prevent customers having joined up thinking and experiences. And just for my own personal network, on LinkedIn, I now have 8,000 people who are service designers in my network, which cannot be true. Most experience metrics are wrong, they're dull, they're worthy, and wrong. So task completion, usability, net promoter score, all have their weaknesses.
We'll have to interrupt you.
Yep.
Run out of time. And I want to check with the audience whether there's questions from the audience. And I'm joining you. You talked about disruption,
yep.
Right? A bit of disruption. So I'm disrupting. And I'm disrupting the way audience questions are being asked. So check it with the audience. Are there questions from the audience about what Simon was talking about and presenting? If not, I have a question for you, Simon. So you talked about how the role of the CMO is changing and how so it's the internal aspect of this change, right? A question for you about external aspect, because obviously we as advertisers, we work with agencies like you, right? What does it mean for a relationship with agencies? And what does it mean for a relationship with agencies that could be considered maybe as traditional agencies, like media agencies? Do you think their role will shift with this?
I think definitely. I think, integrated used to mean above and below the line. And then it meant on and offline. Now I think it also means front of house and back of house. So the service design element, you need to understand how that impacts on a client's business to be able to change the front of house kind of experience. So when we say integration now, it's not above, below, on, off. It's now through the whole organization. And I don't think our industry has the skills to kind of reap those rewards yet.
you talked about new metrics to a certain extent, and obviously we cut you short on that. But so I'm interested in, since this is a data conference, right? What will it mean for measurement and metrics? How will we need to measure success in this new space, and do we need to come up with new metrics to do so?
I don't believe we do, because 20 years ago, in the 90s, people used to put their advertising on their website, and they used to change the website to reflect the advertising, which is crazy in this day and age. Today, what you're seeing is more and more advertising that's just service design. So it's, hey, we've got a new app, a new experience, we've brought new benefits to a customer. So I think the key difference is the metrics are going to be the same. Advertising is still advertising. But now the lead is not coming from creative agencies with a creative idea, it's coming internally from the client with new products and services that really add value to consumers, and it's about advertising those to people to bring new people in.
So it's interesting, so you say, so basically agencies will have to adapt to the new needs of the advertiser. We'll still be using the same metrics to measure success and the outcome and the output, I guess, of what we do. You talked about the changing role of the CMO already, right? The CMO being involved in technology decisions, which is certainly something that he or she was not involved in even a couple of years ago, right? But what does it mean in terms of capabilities of the entire marketing organization? How do you see that evolving, and what do you think that we should be doing as advertisers to adapt to this environment?
Yeah, a good question. I think, I think digital literacy and technology literacy amongst agencies and client companies is extremely low, and actually that's a big business risk. But sending your kids to coding courses and learning coding, those jobs can be done by robots in the future. So you're just teaching your kids to be qualified for menial tasks. So I don't think like coding is the answer, but I do think that our understanding of technology and what that could enable in all the great things we do in communications and media, that's the bit that people don't understand yet.
Okay, so very interesting. Thank you, Simon. I'm just going to check whether there's any questions sparked by this dialogue. Any questions from the room for Simon? No? Oh yeah, maybe one from there. Can we bring a mic? The lady sitting right in front.
Hello. Could you give us an example of a brand who makes a good job in bringing inside outside?
Yeah, so I think there's two examples. One is it's easier for a service organization to adopt the approach. So banks, for example, have been beaten up since 2008, and they really are trying to invest in this service experience to bring to consumers. Still be untrusted and hated by most people, but that's one thing. And then I think more kind of thoughtful CPG or FMCG brands, Unilever, for example, I'm sure there's some Unilever people here. They have Mark McClellan, who is a Chief Marketing Technology Officer, and that we're beginning to see that as a new role and a new theme where the CMO is expected to buy a lot of technology now, but maybe it has no history of doing that. So there's almost a new hybrid role between the CMO and a CTO called the CMTO, who takes charge of ensuring that those investments are made well. And the investment in back-end technology pays off in front-end client-serving kind of benefits.
There's time for just one more question. The gentleman there in the middle.
Hello. Curious about your vision on how dynamic DCO sort of plays a role in this ecosystem.
Sorry, there's a bit of an echo on.
So the dynamic creative optimization, the DCO, how would it sort of fit into this ecosystem?
So I'm not ECO.
So it's essentially the dynamic creative optimization as to how you change it and how that impacts the user experience. Any experience whether that fits in this system?
So controversially, I don't think anyone ever personalized their way to a great brand. I think it's direct marketing dressed up as something else. Like great brands are not personalized. Take El Bulli, the famous Catalan restaurant. Like nothing was designed around you at all. Think like the best campaign from last year, Like a Girl. That wasn't personalized for men or women or young or old. Great advertising creates social currency. And that's what you need to get right first. Tweaking the graphic equalizer around dynamic content is playing in the margins, I would say, and it's not going to make you win the race.
That's a very clear point of view. Thank you, Simon. Give the man a hand.
Thanks, Johan. Thanks, Johan.